I love you. I need you to survive. What better lyrics to get us focused on what it is that we need. I want to thank all of you for being here today. I want to thank all the clergy for being with us. How about that choir? Shamar, not too bad, huh? You're from the 9th Ward. I'm from the 13th. I'm overwhelmed and inspired by the turnout today and the passion that all of you have brought with you. When you boil this down to its essence, we are all standing on a very narrow edge of time. And we have to make a decision about whether or not we're going to fall off of it, or whether we're going to pull back from the abyss and lay a foundation for our future, for our sons, and for our daughters. This is really what we're here for. We're here to discuss what happens when we are gone, what this city is going to look like when our children are grown. I want to tell you a few stories that will crystallize what this period in our history is about. It's 1994. It's Mother's Day. A young boy, 9 years old, his name's James Darby, and his mama and their family decide that they want to have a picnic. They leave their house, they walk down the street to A.L. Davis Park. For those of you that live in the 13th Ward around me, it's on the corner of Washington and Simon Boulevard. So he and his mama and his sisters go to the park. There were a lot of other families and mamas there sitting for a while, and then somebody decided to play a little pickup football game. As they played, one of the players got knocked down. And when he got up, he said something to little James. The other boy's sister got upset, and a little scuffle broke out. And during the scuffle, the little sister got hit by an elbow in the eye, and she left the park. She was crying. She went home with her little brother, and when she got home, they told their older brother, Joseph, about it, and Joseph got really upset. See, Joseph had been drinking all day, and someone had disrespected his little sister. Unbeknownst to anyone else, his little sister, who was around 14, was pregnant. So Joseph's father, who had left years ago, left Joseph to take care of his family. See, he was the man of the house. He had to avenge his family's honor. So he and his little brother Michael got in the back of the car, and they went back to A.L. Davis Park. Now, by this time, James and his mama and the other families were heading home. They were walking down the street. And Joseph and Michael pulled up next to the group. Joseph stuck out a sawed-off shotgun out of the window and fired into the crowd. Before that day, we believe Joseph had never fired a gun before. But this time, when he fired the gun, it hit James in the head. He died, 9 years old, on that Mother's Day. 6 days before that day, a letter arrived at the White House addressed to President Clinton. And this is what the letter said, quote, "I'm afraid for my life. I'm afraid that something is going to happen to me." And it was signed by James Darby. And you know what? Something did happen. And this singular incident encapsulizes one of the great tragedies in America today. People on the street being killed by others. The pain and the agony of losing a child for both the family of the victim and the family of the perpetrator. Because you see, both of these children, James and Joseph, are gone. One taken from us too soon. The other, Joseph, today, is 36 years old. He's been in Angola for 17 years, and he will be there for the rest of his life. We must protect James, and we must save Joseph. Joseph had some learning disabilities, but the schools never picked that up. Joseph had a neighborhood that didn't have good programming in it. Joseph had been shot twice in his teenage years. We must save Joseph too, because when we save him, you see, we save ourselves. And we save James. We save all of our sons. The pain and the agony of both of these mothers at once falling into a deep downward spiral of despair is something that has plagued the city of New Orleans and this great country for too long. Common pain, common agony, common suffering that only a mother can feel in the depths of her soul when a parent lives to see the death of a child. That, my friends, is unnatural. What should be rare has become all too common, and it is something that we have become accustomed to, as if it's natural or normal. And it is something that, if we are to survive, we have to change. 1996. On the same street, in the same neighborhood, 16 years after James Darby's death, our children continue to be taken from us. You remember this last September, after a parade, Delarania Galman was saying goodbye to her friends and her family, including her 2-year-old, while her 2-year-old sat in the car with her grandmother, waiting nearby. While waiting, a silver Chevy Impala pulled up. 2 young boys inside the Piala began raining shots, aiming for a group of young men who were standing by the Galman's car. As bullets zipped through the air, the children's grandmother instinctively reached over and covered up the babies. But Jeremy, out of curiosity, lifted up his head to see what was going on. And that was the last thing that he did. You see, Jeremy was too young, too innocent to know the crack of gunfire meant that danger was approaching. So as he looked up, a bullet struck him in the side of the head. In panic, his uncle raced him to a nearby hospital, but it was too late. Jeremy died September 26, 2010. He was 2. Through the crossfire of bullets, they were not intended for Jeremy. But the consequence was the same. Another child taken too early. Through the reckless action of young people seeking revenge, a 2-year-old lost his life, and a family was torn apart. And in fact, history was changed. These acts of violence that took James and Jeremy from us they're not isolated incidents. In fact, since 1994, in your city, on the streets of the United States of America, over 4,000 people have lost their lives. 4,000 people, each one a brother or a sister, a mother, a father, a son, a daughter, each murder spurring more hate and more revenge, creating an unholy and vicious cycle of violence that has poisoned our city and drowned us for too long. It must stop. It has to stop. Amen is right. And of the 4,000 people murdered in our city over the past 16 years, 175 of them in 2010 alone. The majority of the victims were young African-American men killed at the hands of other young African-American men. We asked the Department of Justice to help us tackle this problem. They did some research, and here is what we know. In almost 80% of the known cases, the victim and the offender knew each other. And these murders are highly concentrated geographically in the city. Both victims and perpetrators are mostly young, mostly unemployed, mostly African American males with criminal records already. Our homicides are not as drug or gang related as they are in other cities. And ordinary disputes that used to be solved with a fist fight now escalate into a bullet in the back of the head. Y'all need to hear this now. In February of this year, 2011, this year, a 17-year-old was shot to death in the 7th Ward. The same weekend, a 19-year-old was gunned down by a man with an assault rifle. Earlier that month, a 15-year-old was killed in the East. Another 15-year-old was shot dead in Holy Cross in January. And last September, someone murdered a 16-year-old. All teenagers. Every one of them was classmates at John McDonough High School. From September of last year to February of this year, a student attending John McDonough High School was more likely to be killed than an American soldier in Afghanistan. Are you listening to me? That's right. A higher likelihood of being murdered on the streets of New Orleans than an American soldier being killed in Afghanistan. Quite frankly, right now, being on our streets is like a war. And in fact, it is a war that's being waged for the heart and the soul of New Orleans. And we are leaving our brothers and our sisters behind. New Orleans, this is the most difficult and important challenge that we face. All of our progress, all of our hard work, our past and our future lie in our ability to change the culture of violence and death in our city to one of a culture of life, of peace, of prosperity, of joy, and of possibility. That is our mission. But it seems to me that we have become numb because of the frequency of these tragedies. We cannot allow them to continue, and we cannot simply consider them to be part of our daily lives, of our culture, like taking a streetcar, eating a roast beef sandwich, watching a parade, hanging out at the second line. Because every life has value, and every murder kills a piece of us all. These murders bring pain and suffering, fear and despair, and they threaten our freedom because we cannot be free if we live in fear. These murders have a cost, both in dollars and in human capital. We've already spent $335,000 for Joseph Norfleet in Angola, and before he dies, we will spend another $1 million. $1.35 million if you just care about dollars and cents. But it's much, much more than that. We're losing the next trombone shorty, or Ellis Marcellus, the next Shamar Allen, the next generation of scientists, firefighters, CEOs, elected officials. And in this battle for our sons, for our future, we must come together once again, just as we did after Katrina and the BP oil spill, the national recession, because this situation is just as important, just as critical for our city's future. New Orleans, this is about changing the culture of death and violence that has held us back for generations. This is about coming together to triumph over yet another challenge. This is about moving forward, moving past the vestiges of poverty and racism and marching into the light of freedom and redemption. This is about creating a pathway to prosperity, not a pathway to prison. It takes courage, it takes hope, and yeah, it's really about liberty. And yes, it's hard. My mama didn't raise no fool. This is going to take a cultural shift in the way we value life, in the way we view each other, not as enemies, as black or white, but as a neighbor and as a family. You see, here's the thing about culture. People are afraid to change it. Right? You know why? Somebody say why? Because they think all culture is equal. It ain't. The culture of violence is not good. The culture of disrespect is not good. The culture of death is not good. But the culture of excellence is good, and that's where we want to go. We want a culture of diversity. We want a culture where every kid has a chance to learn. We want a culture of safety. The people of New Orleans, we can keep the things about our culture that make us rich, like our music and our gumbo and our year-round festivals. And we can get rid of those things that hold us back and make us weak and threaten us. This is all our choice. But it's going to require a delicate touch. It's going to require a great amount of insight and prayer. And ultimately, it's going to require courage from you. And only the people in this room, only you who are here in this community can actually stand up and provide that. And so I say again, it ain't going to be easy. But we must be willing to do what is difficult for the sake of what is right. And it has to be all of us together. You've heard me say it before, one team, one fight, one voice, one city. Some say it's not possible. I say it is. And this is why I know it is. Right after Katrina hit, as the water rose, those of us that were on the ground witnessed the future of New Orleans. I witnessed people helping each other out without regard to race, to creed, or to color, or geography. It didn't matter whether you lived in the 14th Ward or the 9th Ward. It didn't matter whether you lived in Gertown or Pigeontown or back of town, New Orleans East or the West Bank. It didn't matter. You know why? Because we were all in peril and we were all drowning. We had a common enemy. We had a common threat. And you know what happened? We didn't get small. We didn't become hateful. We got big. We got strong. We reached out and we helped each other. Oh, yes, we did. I saw old white women walking down the street hand in hand with young black girls who lost their mamas and their daddies in the dark when it was scary. I saw 3 young black boys wheeling an old white man down the street on a cafeteria cart. He was helpless. He was frail. He couldn't even walk down the street. But these young boys got him out of harm's way. In those people, in those moments, I saw the possibilities of what can happen when we put it all down and we come together. In New Orleans, we are a place of family. That is who we are. That is what we do. So now it's time to wake up, New Orleans. We've risen out of the waters. But today we still face an epidemic that threatens our existence as a people. Now, I didn't come here today just to have you listen to me talk. I'm tired of hearing me talk. I didn't ask you to come here today to watch the footage of another murdered New Orleanian. You can see that at the top of the 10 o'clock news nearly every night. I asked you to come here to join an army in the battle for the future of this city that we love so much.